The streets of Oak Ridge City never really sleep. By day, they're full of life, laughter, traffic, people chasing dreams. But when the sun sinks behind the high-rise towers, these same streets change. The glow fades. The quiet turns heavy. And sometimes, good people end up walking straight into darkness. Tonight's story is about a woman who everyone underestimated. To the world, she was just a nurse, quiet, gentle, the kind of woman who'd patch up your wounds and wish you well. But when 3 men tried to rob her on her way home, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Because this helpless woman wasn't helpless at all. She wasn't even who they thought she was. Before we go any further, tell me where in the world you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story will hit even harder than this one. She walked alone that night, her scrubs still damp with blood from her last ER shift. A black SUV idled down the block. 3 men stepped out, confident, hungry, certain they'd found easy prey. But what they didn't know was that Naomi Clark wasn't walking home from a hospital. She was walking straight into a sting operation. And by the end of this night, the hunters would become the hunted. The last bus had already gone. Naomi Clark adjusted the strap of her worn leather purse as she turned down Birchwood Avenue, her sneakers splashing through shallow puddles. The clock on the corner pharmacy flickered. 11:47 p.m. Another 12-hour shift at Oak Ridge General Hospital. Another night she promised herself she'd call a cab. And didn't. She wasn't afraid of the streets. She'd walked them all her life. But lately, the city felt different. The alleys darker, the laughter quieter, and the news headlines more frequent. Another resident assaulted near West Point. Police urge caution after string of robberies in South Oak Ridge. Still, Naomi believed in calm over panic. She believed in people. But people weren't what worried her tonight. As she passed the old bakery, the faint rumble of an engine idling reached her ears. A black SUV sat under a dying streetlight, headlights dimmed, like a predator waiting in tall grass. Her heart rate didn't spike, it steadied. Her mind didn't panic, it calculated. She shifted her keys into her dominant hand, finger brushing the small panic button hidden beneath her car fob. 3 doors opened almost in sync. Boots on wet concrete. Low laughter. "Hey, sweetheart. Walkin' home alone?" Naomi didn't answer. She kept her steps measured, unhurried, her breathing even. The men fanned out, blocking her path. The leader, Rico, mid-30s, tatted neck, cigarette behind his ear, stepped closer. His grin didn't reach his eyes. "Nice purse," he said, tapping his chest. "Hand it over, and maybe we let you walk away." Naomi's eyes flicked between them. 3 men. 1 knife. 1 pipe. One of them, nervous, twitching, too young for this life. The kind of recruit gangs throw into the fire first. She sighed softly. "You don't want to do this." "Oh, I think I do," Rico said, stepping closer. "Now gimme the bag." Naomi loosened her shoulders, like a woman surrendering. Then it happened fast. Her right hand shot up, catching his wrist mid-swing. A twist, a crack, a grunt. The knife clattered to the pavement. Before the second man could react, Naomi spun, elbowing him in the jaw so hard his head snapped sideways. The third man lunged, but she pivoted, using his momentum to flip him over her shoulder. The impact echoed through the empty street. Rico staggered back, stunned. His hand clutched his wrist in disbelief. "What the? Who are you?" Naomi straightened, her calm voice cutting through the tension. "Someone you should have never touched." A sharp flash of blue light bathed the alley. Engines roared from both ends of the block. Unmarked sedans screeched to a stop. Armed officers stepped out, weapons drawn. Oak Ridge Police. Hands where we can see 'em. The men froze, eyes wide. Rico dropped to his knees as the reality sank in. Naomi reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small black ID case, flipping it open. Special Agent Naomi Clark, Oak Ridge Police, Internal Affairs Division. The officers nodded respectfully. "Good work, Agent Clark," one said. "We got him." Naomi's voice remained steady, though adrenaline still pulsed in her veins. "Cuff them carefully. Rico's the talker. Don't rough him up." As the suspects were led to the cruisers, Naomi crouched near the fallen knife, her reflection shimmering in the wet pavement. This wasn't just another arrest. This was confirmation. 4 months, she'd been undercover, posing as a nurse, living quietly among the people being terrorized, studying every pattern in the crimes. Every attack followed the same blueprint, the same blocks, the same victims. Elderly black homeowners, families who'd lived in Oak Ridge for generations. She stood, brushing rain off her sleeve, eyes narrowing at the retreating SUV being impounded. They thought they were robbing a stranger tonight. They didn't know they'd walked straight into a trap. Naomi took one last look at the blood-smeared pavement and whispered under her breath, "That's one piece of the puzzle down. Now, who's feeding them the addresses?" The streetlight flickered above her, buzzing softly like the city's heartbeat. The predators had just met their match. Perfect. Here's your expanded Chapter 2 for the story. They jumped the quiet nurse at night, but she wasn't what they thought. This chapter deepens the investigation, tension, and emotional weight, mirroring your competitor's tone and structure, but entirely reimagined with new characters, new stakes, and cinematic realism fit for YouTube narration. The sound of the rain still echoed in Naomi's mind long after the arrests. Back at Oak Ridge Police Headquarters, the glow of the monitors bathed the room in sterile blue light. Naomi stood before a wall of case files pinned in clusters, red yarn connecting names, streets, and timestamps. Each pin told a story. An elderly couple robbed a week before signing a home sale offer. A single mother attacked the same night her eviction notice appeared. And now, her own ambush on Birchwood Avenue. It wasn't coincidence. It was coordination. Across the table sat Agent Luis Moreno, her longtime partner, sharp-eyed, easy smile, the kind of detective who read between silences. He slid a folder toward her. "You were right again," he said. "Every victim got a lowball offer within 72 hours of being attacked." Naomi frowned, flipping through the photographs. Developers, real estate agents, city council liaisons. Different faces, same handwriting on the contracts. "They're not just stealing purses," she murmured. "They're stealing neighborhoods." Moreno nodded. "And the scariest part? Someone inside's helping them. The kind of info they've got doesn't come from the streets." He turned to his screen, pulling up a digital map. Red clusters blinked like open wounds across South Oak Ridge. "The same blocks are being cleared out," he said. "Once they're empty, redevelopment proposals flood in from the same construction firms." Naomi leaned in. "You think this is a political racket?" "I think it's worse," Moreno replied. "It's city-sponsored displacement. Make the area look dangerous, drive down prices, then sell it to luxury developers." The realization hit her like a cold wave. She'd seen this before, not in headlines, but in childhood memories. When she was 12, her father's barbershop was shut down for redevelopment. They never reopened. The corner where she used to buy ice pops as a kid? Now a parking lot for high-end condos. She clenched her jaw. History was repeating itself. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Silence for 3 seconds. Then a man's voice, smooth and slow. Agent Clark, you should have stayed in the hospital. Not all patients want to be saved. The line went dead. Naomi froze, eyes narrowing. The call log showed no trace, spoofed. Professional. Moreno noticed her expression. What is it? Someone knows my cover's blown. She walked to the evidence board, pinning the burner phone printout next to Rico's arrest photo. Find out where that number bounced from, she ordered. And cross-check every city employee who's handled redevelopment permits in the last 6 months. Moreno sighed, already typing. That's half of City Hall, Naomi. Then start with the half that got richer this year, she said sharply. As he worked, Naomi turned toward the mirror above the coffee station. The woman staring back didn't look like a nurse anymore. There was exhaustion in her eyes, and something else, resolve. A knock broke the tension. Officer Denning stepped in, holding a sealed envelope. From Records Division, he said. Anonymous drop-off. Marked urgent. Naomi tore it open. Inside were photocopies of internal memos, Oak Ridge Development Office. Stamped confidential. At the top of each memo was the same signature. Councilman Ezra Dorsey. Moreno whistled low. Well, that's interesting. The memo listed community revitalization targets, streets and homes flagged for safety evaluation. She traced one name with her finger, Mrs. Webb, her elderly neighbor. They planned this months in advance, Naomi whispered. Every assault, every robbery, even the one on me, it's all part of a blueprint. Moreno's computer pinged, the trace complete. Call came from a private line, registered to a firm called Kendrick's Urban Solutions. Naomi blinked. That's the company behind half the redevelopment bids. Moreno nodded grimly. And their top investor? Councilman Dorsey. Silence hung heavy. The puzzle pieces were no longer random. They formed a map, one of corruption, money, and racial manipulation dressed as progress. Naomi turned off the main light, leaving only the glow of the monitors. Her face hardened into focus. If Dorsey thinks he can scare me off, he's about to find out what happens when you pick the wrong woman. She grabbed her jacket and holstered her sidearm. Where are you going? Moreno asked. To make sure the next target on his list sleeps safe tonight. As the door swung shut behind her, Moreno muttered under his breath. And to think those idiots thought they robbed a nurse. The night after the arrests, Oak Ridge City was unnaturally quiet. Naomi sat on her small couch, the television flickering with muted headlines. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago. On the screen, a news anchor spoke with practiced empathy. Authorities report a possible link between recent street attacks and ongoing redevelopment projects. Naomi muted the sound. She didn't need the news to tell her what she already knew. She had evidence, proof that Councilman Ezra Dorsey and his investors were orchestrating a scheme to terrorize longtime residents into selling their homes. The only problem, her proof wasn't enough yet. Not without a name that could tie the violence directly to City Hall. And that name, she suspected, belonged to someone she hadn't met yet, the real puppet master. Her phone buzzed. One new notification. Unknown number. You should have stopped digging, nurse. Attached was a picture. Her front porch, taken minutes ago. Naomi froze. The house around her suddenly felt too still. She stood, her instincts kicking in, hand reaching for her sidearm. The streetlight outside flickered through the blinds. Then, a sound. Glass. Breaking. She spun toward the kitchen. The window above the sink was shattered. A brick lay on the floor, wrapped in newspaper. Inside, a folded note. In red marker. Last warning. The sharp hiss of a car engine peeling away echoed down the street. Naomi rushed to the window, just in time to see a black sedan disappearing around the corner. Her pulse hammered. But she didn't feel fear, just rage. They'd brought the fight to her doorstep. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flooded her street. Officer Denning was first to arrive. Then Moreno. "You okay?" he asked, scanning her window. "I'm fine." "But they're getting desperate," Naomi replied. That's when her neighbor Mrs. Webb appeared, clutching her robe and limping slightly. Her face was bruised, a purple bloom spreading across her cheek. "They came to my door, Naomi," she said shakily. "Two men. Asked if I was moving out soon. When I told them no, they pushed me. Told me the neighborhood wasn't safe anymore." Naomi's breath caught. Her eyes flicked toward Moreno. "It's escalating," he whispered. Mrs. Webb's voice cracked. "They know where I live, child. Where you live. What's happening to our city?" Naomi steadied her. "What's happening is greed, Mrs. Webb. And it ends now." She guided the old woman back to her porch as paramedics checked her bruises. The guilt settled heavy on Naomi's chest. Her cover had drawn danger too close, too personal. The next morning, Naomi arrived at the station early. The lobby buzzed louder than usual, hushed voices, eyes that wouldn't meet hers. Moreno caught up to her in the hallway, phone in hand. "Naomi, you need to see this." He opened a social media feed. A video was going viral. Grainy, low quality, but the image was unmistakable. Naomi, in her hospital scrubs, fighting 3 men on Birchwood Avenue. But the video had been edited. It started after Rico's first attack, cutting the part where he'd pulled the knife. The clip made it look like Naomi had thrown the first punch. A caption in bold letters flashed across the screen. "Police agent assaults unarmed men in Oak Ridge." Naomi's stomach dropped. "They doctored it," she said softly. "They flipped the truth." Moreno nodded grimly. "It's spreading fast. Hashtags. Troll accounts. Coordinated." Her phone started buzzing with notifications, messages, threats, reporters demanding comment. Someone had weaponized her own mission against her. "They're trying to make you the villain," Moreno said. "Turn public opinion before you expose them." Naomi stared at the screen, watching the manipulated footage loop over and over. Her jaw tightened. "Then we hit back, with the truth." Hours later, Naomi met Moreno in the data analysis room. Rows of monitors displayed surveillance feeds, license plates, property records, the digital fingerprints of a conspiracy. "These burner phones the thugs used," Moreno said, pointing to the display. "All purchased with cash. But one buyer used a loyalty card by mistake." Naomi's eyes narrowed. "Whose name?" "A consultant named Vincent Calder, working under Kendrick's Urban Solutions, Dorsey's redevelopment firm." She exhaled slowly. "Then that's our connection." But before they could celebrate, Naomi's desk phone rang. A familiar voice, smooth, polite. "Agent Clark, I hear you're stirring quite the storm. I'd advise you to rest. For everyone's sake." It was Dorsey. Her fingers curled into a fist around the receiver. "You threaten me again, Councilman, and I'll put your name on every headline in this city." "You'll do nothing," he said calmly. "Because by morning you won't have a badge to do it with." The line went dead. Moreno stared at her, concern clouding his face. "He's got reach, Naomi." "So do I," she said, grabbing her coat. "I've got the truth." She didn't know it yet, but that truth was about to cost her everything. That night, Naomi parked 2 blocks from her house, taking side streets on foot. Her instincts screamed that she was being watched. Every flicker of a streetlight felt deliberate. Every passing car slowed a little too long. As she reached her gate, she saw it, a single white envelope taped to her door. Inside, a photo of her mother, Evelyn Clark, taken through a living room window. Below it, written in red marker, "Stop, or we move to family." Her vision blurred with anger and dread. This wasn't just about a cover-up anymore. It was personal. The storm clouds above her cracked open, lightning flashing across Oakridge's skyline. Rain poured down in sheets as Naomi whispered to herself, "You came to my doorstep. Now I'm coming to yours." By dawn, Oakridge City looked calm again. But it was the calm that comes before something breaks. Naomi Clark hadn't slept. She sat in her car outside City Hall, watching men in suits hurry inside, the same men who'd smiled in front of cameras while tearing neighborhoods apart behind closed doors. Inside her jacket, a flash drive burned like a secret waiting to explode. It contained everything: emails, bank transfers, contracts, and voice recordings linking Councilman Ezra Dorsey to the attacks. But releasing it wasn't the hard part. Getting anyone to believe her was. Because to the public, Naomi Clark wasn't a hero anymore. She was the rogue cop from a viral video. The city's media machine had painted her as violent, unstable, corrupt. They took her silence for guilt. But silence was her weapon. Because tonight, she wouldn't fight with fists, she'd fight with truth. She met Agent Moreno 2 blocks away at an old warehouse near the river, their safe house turned war room. Dozens of monitors glowed in the dim light. On one of them, a live feed of the city council chamber. Dorsey was preparing to announce a new urban safety initiative, the final mask over his crimes. Moreno adjusted his headset. "Are you sure you want to do this live? Once it's out, there's no going back." Naomi nodded. "That's the point." She plugged in the flash drive. Within seconds, her face appeared on every screen in Oakridge, breaking through local news channels, digital billboards, and online streams. Her voice filled the airwaves, calm, measured, impossible to ignore. "Good morning, Oakridge. My name is Naomi Clark. Some of you know me as a nurse. Some of you know me as the woman in that video. But what you don't know is why they tried to silence me." The crowd inside City Hall froze as her image appeared on the big screens meant for Dorsey's speech. "For months, I've been working undercover to expose a system designed to make you afraid. Afraid enough to sell your homes, your businesses, your memories. The same people who promised safety have been paying criminals to terrorize our streets." Naomi's voice grew sharper. The robberies weren't random. They were planned, paid for, authorized by this man. The screen cut to hidden camera footage, Dorsey's voice, recorded from Rico's confession night. "Scare them a little. Not too much. We just need the properties cheap." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Outside, phones buzzed, comments flooded social media. Hashtag Justice for Oakridge began trending within minutes. Moreno watched from behind the monitors, whispering, "You just turned the city against its own corruption." Councilman Dorsey stood frozen, sweat glistening on his temple. He glanced toward the exit, but uniformed officers were already entering the room, led by Moreno himself. "Ezra Dorsey," Moreno announced, voice echoing across the chamber, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice." Naomi's live feed continued as cameras turned to capture the scene. To every family who thought no one was watching, I was. To every voice they tried to silence, speak. Because today, the fear ends here. Dorsey was cuffed as the crowd erupted. Half in shock, half in anger. Outside, people filled the streets, residents from every block Naomi had fought to protect. Old shop owners, single mothers, retired teachers, all holding homemade signs that read, "We are Oak Ridge. Homes, not contracts." Thank you, Naomi. Hours later, Naomi stood under the same streetlight where it all began, the one that flickered above Birchwood Avenue. This time, the city felt different. Lighter. Mrs. Webb shuffled toward her, a bandage on her wrist but a smile in her eyes. She handed Naomi a cup of tea. "I told you you were meant for more than hospitals," she said softly. Naomi smiled faintly. "I didn't do it alone." Across the street, Moreno joined her, hands in his pockets. "So what now, Agent Clark?" Naomi looked at the skyline, where the sun was finally cutting through the storm clouds. She turned to Mrs. Webb and added, "And maybe I'll go back to nursing. Only this time, I'll be healing something bigger than wounds." That night, Naomi returned home. The glass in her kitchen window had been replaced. The porch light glowed warm and steady. She sat at her table, the one her father built decades ago, and wrote her final report. Case closed. Oak Ridge redevelopment corruption. Subject: justice restored. Then she wrote one final line beneath it. They jumped the quiet nurse at night, and woke the woman who fought for a city. They thought they were robbing a quiet nurse. But they ended up awakening a storm that changed a city. Sometimes, the strongest people aren't the loudest. They're the ones who fight in silence, until the truth has no choice but to speak. If you were Naomi, would you have risked everything to expose the truth? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story will hit even harder.